add value to your business, or do you want to just be this administrative person?
And often if you look at your talent team and the caliber of talent in your company, they correlate.
You could hire the best person for the job if they were in your candidate pool.
All these individual employees, one by one, together, their voices all come together to articulate the culture of the company.
Instead of making the first step of an application, hey, submit your resume. Open up an assignment. Open up some type of project that anyone can do.
The degree is dead. After weeks of headlines swirling around the largest collegiate admissions fraud case in history, it feels oddly apt to make such a claim. The LA Times wrote, "Wealthy parents in admissions scandal under intense pressure to make deals." It's not incredibly surprising either. Society's premium on a college education and degree has become almost expected, and many critics are arguing that such expectations are actually making it less effective at being a marker of readiness for the workforce or capability of navigating the workforce. Some organizations and leaders have been trying to address such a gap long before the most recent scandal hit the airwaves, though. To talk about one such approach, today we're joined by the COO of Praxis, a company that works to place apprentices with businesses that are looking for entry-level talent. He's helped hundreds of young people start careers at hundreds of startups all over the country. Cameron, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sean. Happy to be here. Excited to talk.
Awesome. So, Cameron, I have to ask, you say, and Praxis says, that the degree is dead, right?
Yep.
Okay. So I have a question. Do you have a degree?
I do. And
okay.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So talk to me about that. So, you got a degree. What did you study at school?
Yeah. So, just a bit on my education background. Growing up, I just never really enjoyed school, but I loved learning. And it was always kind of cumbersome that I had to deal with these classes. And, I was also really competitive and played sports, played soccer specifically at a pretty high level. And I was just always kind of bored in the classroom. I would have rather have been spending my time either, on the soccer field training or, reading and kind of exploring ideas on my own. And of course, just like everyone, I think I have one or two of those really awesome teachers that I felt excited to go to class. But at the end of the day, my K through 12 education felt like, 90% of my time was being wasted, and I never really understood the value in it. And then initially I was really excited to get to college because it was kind of presented as this, much more challenging experience, and you're gonna meet all these different types of people, and kind of the opposite of high school in many ways. And when I got there, it just felt like more of the same. So it was disappointing, but it always felt like something you have to do. You have to go through this experience in order to get to the other side of the rainbow of, jobs land and starting your adult life. So my approach was, I felt stuck in the fact that I had to finish it. So I was always, once I kind of just admitted to myself, there's no alternative for me, the approach I took was, I'm going to find things outside of the classroom that I'm super interested in and spend as much time as possible. And that's where I ended up getting a lot of value. So I actually majored in political science. But, early on, maybe my sophomore year, I got developed a real strong interest for economics. And, I thought about transferring over and changing my major, but I just didn't see the value in what that specific degree would give me. So instead, I would just start skipping a bunch of my classes, and I'd be reading Hayek and Mises and just diving into the things that were particularly interesting to me. And I just always found that more valuable.
Absolutely. And so, you touched on it was almost expected of you to go to college, and I had that exact same experience, where my parents were like, of course you're going to go to college. What do you think you're going to do? And you almost see, in the political spectrum, having studied political science, people constantly talk about the need for maybe more vocational training, less kind of your typical 4-year universities. And so I guess a question for you is, do people get degrees? Is that still the right thing? Or should we be focusing on a different kind of aptitude outside of a traditional classroom?
Well, I think the majority of people, they specifically go to college, like you and I, how we just described, like you're going there for more than anything else because you feel you have to do that to become qualified to start your career.
Yeah.
And if you just take the premise of, okay, what do I need to do to launch my career? I think there are, endless different options that you could have that do not require that. And I think a better question to ask, like, as you're getting to that point, you're like, okay, I want to be launching my career. Ask what, my thing is you should pick a specific type of job that you want to get without, having to go through the stress of feeling like you're picking your career for the next, 20, 40 years of your life.
Yeah.
Just what is one interesting job that would be challenging and interesting to you, and reverse engineer what do I need to do? What skills do I need to be able to do this job well and create value for an employer and actually win that opportunity? And if you start there, I think there's countless things you can do to get the answer to that without that is, faster, better, and cheaper than spending 4 or 5 years in a classroom and racking up, 6 figures in debt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think a bunch of recruiters, listening to this probably resonate with that because there isn't really a degree for recruiting. There isn't really a degree for sales.
Yep. Yeah. These non-tech roles, recruiting is a great one because I've never come across a, 18, 20-year-old that's like, hey, I want to become a recruiter. Mm-hmm. There's all these, at a young age, people think about careers in kind of these large boxes. It's like doctor, lawyer, businessman.
Yeah.
Like, as a job you can get. And I think that's a big thing. The gaining as a young person, how do you go about gaining context for the career landscape? And I think, formal educational institutions, whether it's K through 12 or higher education, more so they limit you. They're kind of blocking you from the real world. That's the kind of the academic environment, and you don't get a lot of exposure to all these different types of careers. I think, especially in recruiting, like most people don't know about recruiting until they're in the workforce, and it's like, oh, I was recruited by somebody and you kind of stumble into it. You're like, oh, I like talking to people. Maybe there's a certain specific type of profession that you have background in, and you're like, I enjoy that profession, but more so than anything, I enjoy building relationships with people in that profession. And then you kind of end up in a recruiting role all of a sudden.
Yeah. And I think that, as many organizations shift away from degree requirements. I mean, Google and Apple notoriously stopped requiring degrees and instead started looking for, applicable, relevant experience. And so I think more and more organizations are saying, okay, maybe a degree isn't necessary, but those are also some forward-thinking organizations. Do we feel like the majority of companies are saying, okay, you don't need a college degree, and instead we will look solely at aptitude or relevant experience first?
Yeah, so in my experience, through Praxis and helping place young people in entry-level non-tech roles at leading tech companies and growing startups, it's interesting. I think most people, I've seen a trend with just the job description itself. I think when we started out 4 or 5 years ago, at least certainly over 50% of them, they had college degree required. That's kind of the first bullet point you see under requirements. Now, more often than not, it's softened up a bit where I see something usually along the lines of college degree preferred, or relevant experience. And then, I think it's definitely more of the forward-thinking types of companies and organizations that either completely leave off some type of formal education, but it's softening, and even in my experience, even the ones that have college degree required on the job description, that's never an actual requirement. We've sent people using Praxis profile and a body of work of projects, And it's like, hey, let me pitch you on this specific candidate. And 9 times out of 10, they don't even ask about their education background. I think more, it's more people just expect you to have that on a job description. And it's become kind of this stale practice that we all implement. But recruiters and companies, they want to know if you can do the job. That's the answer. That's the question they're trying to answer, when they're, reviewing resumes and then going through the hiring process. So if you can show them something better than a degree, they're not going to care about, your education status.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as someone that hires, folks for the SDR position, a degree isn't necessarily the defining factor whether or not someone can do the job. There are a ton of those intangibles that you get through conversing with someone and having just a two-way dialogue that can define whether or not they can actually go out, be resourceful, be creative, have that grit that you really need to be a successful sales development rep. So totally agree with that. I think, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think, the degree, there's so many people that have that signal. They've achieved that landmark. So you could be anywhere on the spectrum, on the weaker side or stronger side of a candidate. It's just not giving you a lot of information from the recruiting perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And context is what is going to empower a recruiter, over another one. If you can understand the totality of someone as opposed to just what is put on their resume, you're going to have a better understanding and make a better hire than someone else. Right. The thing that I keep coming back to, and I think back to when I was first looking for internships and then first looking for my corporate job, so many entry-level positions would talk about looking for years of experience. And I remember this kind of chicken versus the egg argument of okay, I need to get an entry-level position to get the experience, but then I need experience to get the entry-level job, and it goes kind of this cyclical thing. So kind of curious, how can people go about getting that experience? And I might have just set up a perfect T-ball for you to hit and talk about Praxis, but go ahead and give us some ideas.
Sure. So, I mean, I think everyone kind of experiences that frustration early on in their career because, what companies are trying to look for is the dream, the unicorn candidate, right? That's kind of what they write a job description for. So it can feel really discouraging when you come across these and you're like, wow, I don't even have 25% of the requirements that they're stating in a job posting. And I think it's really, really common to be discouraged by that. But I think there's so much opportunity. So I'm actually outside of the context of a program like Praxis. I think there's so many things you could do to prove to a company that, hey, even though I don't have that 2 years of experience in sales already, I want to prove to you that, I'm worth taking a chance on. And I think it comes back to, as a candidate, if you can start doing the job before you get the job, the better off you'll be. And that's how you stand out compared to other candidates. So most people applying to a role, they're looking on jobs boards or the company's website, and they're following the application rules. They're submitting a resume. Maybe there's a few questions that they essay questions, like why do you want to work here? And they're just going around submitting resumes to 50, 100 different jobs, and they have this really spray and pray method of the job search. As a candidate, if you can hone in on one company and say, all right, I want to become an SDR at Intello. What if you went out and researched who Intello is trying to sell to, put together a spreadsheet of 50 prospects, and then create a an cold email sequence, and then submitted that as a project along with your initial application. That is going to tell the recruiter that, wow, this person, at minimum, it's going to tell the recruiter this person spent 10x more time on their application than the average applicant. And that's already exciting. How often do recruiters come across people that go above and beyond at the top of the hiring funnel? And then if it's done really well, you're going to show that you took the time to research the company's prospects. You took the time to like think through like what would be a good sales sequence to send them, even if like the email copy isn't great in that sales sequence. The fact that you're even just approaching it from that mindset, I think really, really puts you ahead of the game there.
Yeah, if I got a application like that, I guarantee you it would, jump the line. That shows a ton of initiative, and it shows resourcefulness, which, I was talking about kind of those intangibles before. And for a lot of non-technical roles, so much of, a business person's profession are those intangibles. It's resourcefulness. It's, that kind of inquisitiveness, that creativity that really shine through with programs like that. So right. I totally agree. From a talent organization or talent department's perspective, then, how can, someone in recruiting or even someone in maybe kind of the people operations side make sure that they are fielding the right kind of candidates, and also like helping to train the candidates they do bring in the door to make sure that they have even more relevant experience?
Once they're on board?
Yeah.
So the first part, and I'm seeing this trend as well with companies. More and more companies are adding some type of project or an assignment as an activity to their hiring process. So, instead of just relying on, all right, job posting, review resumes, a few rounds of interviews. I think the best companies that are finding the best young talent, especially, they are setting up projects like, all right, we have a customer success position. We want to see what this person, how do they actually do the job? So they'll bring them in, and instead of having a typical traditional interview, they'll set them up on live chat and do mock customer communications. One of the companies that we work with does a really cool project early on in the hiring process of, they give an assignment of pick your favorite app on your phone and create like a 1 to 2 page user guide on how to use that app. And I think that's a great way, because they're looking for people that can explain more technical issues that a customer might have using their product in a simple way. And then you're looking for that attention to detail. And then by giving them an assignment, they have to set and hold themselves accountable to a deadline. And I think the more you can replicate the experience of what it would feel like to work with this person on a regular basis, the better. And in most of the companies that I've seen doing that stuff, they're usually doing that in the middle towards the end of the hiring process. And I think companies should push more to do that at the top of the funnel. So instead of making the first step of an application, hey, submit your resume, open up an assignment, open up some type of project that anyone can do. And I think companies can be scared of that because they're scared of, scaring candidates away. But most companies, especially for like entry-level non-tech roles, they're getting blasted with resumes from all over, and you can't even tell who's a good fit and who's not. And then you're spending so much time reviewing candidates at the top of the funnel. And I think you can put some pretty good filters right at the top. And I think that trains people to take that approach of, oh, they expect me to show them instead of tell them how I can create value. And I think the best candidates, they notice that. They get excited, like, oh man, this is a challenge I can take on. And I think higher quality talent's going to be more attracted to your company when they're challenged that way.
Yeah, and that follow through, that intent is a great indicator that this person cares. They actually want to commit to it. So I hear that. So I'd love to jump in, we're humming along here, Cameron, but I'd love to hear a little bit about what Praxis does and kind of about the apprenticeship program. And, it's funny, I say that word and I think about Game of Thrones coming back in a couple weeks and I hear the term apprentice, and that's what I think about. So talk to me about apprenticeship in the modern, work society and the startup culture.
Yeah, absolutely. So Praxis, it's a 12-month startup apprenticeship program. And at the end of the day, why we exist is to help people launch their careers. And so from the the participant side, how the program's set up is it's a 6-month professional boot camp that they go through. And during that boot camp, they go through monthly modules, and we're kind of helping them develop those core soft and intangible skills that you need to succeed as a young professional, no matter what job you're getting. And there's a heavy advising and mentorship component. So as they're going through these project-based modules every month, they're attending weekly live workshops. They have one-on-one advising sessions throughout those 6 months. And so we're pretty much getting them to the point of, hey, the people we accept in the program, you have potential. You can succeed in the workplace, but we want to accelerate that growth to get you ready to go into a full-time entry-level role within 4 to 6 months. So we're giving you kind of those basic skills, and really everything you're building through that boot camp. What you're actually doing is putting together a portfolio, a body of work that will help you land interviews with our partner companies, and then eventually. Once you kind of successfully complete the boot camp, you go into our placement process, and you eventually win a 6-month apprenticeship at a growing tech startup for the most part. And they're going into sales and customer success roles and marketing and like jack of all trades utility types for earlier stage companies. And then that 6-month apprenticeship, it's set up where you're working full time, and then you're still going through the Praxis education experience, where we're accelerating your professional development even more and keeping you accountable as well to your performance in your job. So from the company's perspective, not only are we vetting candidates up front through our own application and through this boot camp, but we are going to kind of take lead on their professional development during that kind of crucial first 6 months of their professional career. And if you perform well in your apprenticeship, you're set up where you will receive a full-time offer from the company you apprentice for.
That's smart. It essentially seems like a more modern vocational program, specifically geared towards that, kind of ephemeral business person profession, like you talked about earlier. Right.
I think, there's a lot of different types of programs and alternatives popping up for, people interested in tech. And then, I think people, when we're talking about kind of college alternatives, a lot of people go right to either like coding boot camps or trade schools. Mm-hmm. And I think there's so many people that neither of those really feels like the right fit. Like myself, for example, like I loved learning and I loved playing sports. I was super competitive and I was kind of entrepreneurial, but I knew I wasn't going to be like one of these prodigies that goes like founds a startup at age 20 or whatever. But I just wanted to be around interesting people doing interesting work, and I had no idea what that looked like. And I think if you're that type of person, Praxis is perfect. Like we're going to help you discover the types of early careers that are a good fit for you, and then most importantly, actually start getting work experience. That's the only way you're going to figure out what you love to do at the end of the day. For companies, honestly, it's a no-brainer. Like we're going to deliver you better talent than you could otherwise find, and we're gonna help you train them early on. Mm.
And so I guess as a parting thought here, Cameron, what kind of advice would you give to a talent acquisition specialist or a recruiter to help them be better at identifying that quality talent, maybe without the crutch of looking for a degree first?
Yeah, I think I would say think more deeply about, okay, what are the top 2 or 3 skills or traits that you need the best candidates to have, and how can you set up your hiring process, especially at the top of the funnel, to filter for those. I think a lot of these types of roles are, the hiring process, it's wasted on people that just aren't going to be a good fit. And that's, if you can figure out a way to set the hiring process up where if someone does X, that's going to, tell you they have the skills to do it. and it's going to require work on their end to actually perform that instead of just submitting a resume, you're going to make your hiring process more efficient, and you're going to attract a higher quality candidate overall.
Awesome advice. Thanks for that, Cameron. So if people wanted to learn more about you and learn more about Praxis, where can they go?
Yep, they can go to discoverpraxis.com. We have a partner page where you can get more information about partnering with us and for us to help you find talent. And then we're also working on a new project called Crash. So you can find that at crash.co, and it's going to be kind of part of this larger career launch and talent recruitment movement that we're building.
Awesome. Well, sounds very cool, Cameron. I appreciate you taking the time and look forward to seeing where Praxis and Crash go.
All right. Thanks, Sean.